Everyone, thank you so much for joining. This is the first tuner webinar, and I'm very excited to have this conversation. My name is May Medhat. I'm one of the founders of Tuner, and I have my partners here, Nihal and Muhammad, and we will have a very interesting conversation today. Hopefully, it will be very practical, very hands-on, and if you are building voice agents, if you are running voice agents on production, hopefully you will find it useful and learn a thing or two. Let me share my screen and we can start. Okay, I hope you are seeing this. So let's start with some housekeeping. So this is the agenda. Basically, this is what we will cover today. What's Voice AI Observability? And then we'll share a very practical framework. So to explain how you can think about Voice AI, observability, what to monitor, what to track, and so on. Then we will share some best practices and a walkthrough to the Tuner platform. And then we'll end by Muhammad will give us a technical integration demo on how to integrate Tuner to any stack you are using. And then some Q&A. Please feel free to post any questions, any comments, anything on the chat, and we will have time at the end to cover all of that. Okay, so what's Tuner? Basically, what is Voice AI Observability? I think it's a great time to be building in Voice AI today. The industry is moving very, very fast, and incredible achievements has been done in the past few months, years, or even weeks. And we're seeing big shift from demos and just trial use cases into production and real use cases for voice AI. And the big question is, once we build a voice agent, once we push it to production, what happened? How the voice agent behave, the quality, how to ensure it's really working, what's breaking, and so on. And I think the big question we are trying to solve is really understanding how voice AI behave on production at scale. If you have thousands of calls every day, it's very hard to monitor that. There's no way you can write test cases to cover all the use cases for voice AI. And at the same time, it's very unlikely that you would listen to every single call to understand how people are interacting with your voice agent. So Tuner is the observability platform for voice agents that gives you the full production visibility, what works, what breaks, why, and help you improve your voice agent as you go. One thing that actually motivates us, and one thing why we're building Tuner is we build voice agents ourselves, and I probably spoke to maybe 100 more teams who are building voice AI in the past few weeks. And most of the time, they discover the problems from customers, frustrated customers, customer complaints, and even sometimes from social media. These are examples, real examples that happened to big companies and big enterprises. And for me, it's very shocking, to be honest. For example, McDonald's, they implemented voice agents, I think a few years ago, into 500 locations in the drive-through, in 500 branches across the US. And they had to shut down the whole project because repeated errors that happened all the time, and people were posting on it on social media, taking TikTok videos and all of that. For example, one agent, it went into a loop, so it added to one order 260 chicken nuggets to one order. Another customer had a video where they got ice cream with topping, a bacon topping. Taco Bell had the same situation where some users were intentionally trying to troll or to break the system. So there was one user who ordered like 18,000 cups of water, and it went through and it went to the checkout. So I think what I'm saying here is when voice AI fails, it it breaks trust. And if it happens to big companies, it's somehow fragile. That's why we need to have more systems in place to really trust how the agent perform, catch all of these errors early so it doesn't happen in the future or prevent more critical issues from happening. So let's dive in how to think about voice AI observability. We have a very simple framework. It's like 5 questions framework. And basically, if you answer these questions, or if you are building evals or matrices for your voice agents, this is how you should think about it. And we'll get into details for each one in a moment. But basically, the questions are like, are the conversations successful? Is the agent really delivering the business goal or the outcome? Is the AI responding correctly? Does the funnel, does it feel natural? Is the conversation flowing naturally, or it's like an awkward silence between a bot, like a real bot, and human? Are we missing any user needs or intents, or are we covering basically all the different use cases? And the last one, is the system reliable or stable? And we will jump into more details here. So the first layer, or the first point to think about, is business outcome, or the health of the voice agent. Here, think about results, business outcome. Ideally, you build that voice agent to achieve something, to achieve like a business goal at the end of the day. And the big question to answer is the agent actually achieving the goal? And here you can look at metrics or KPIs like success rate, intent breakdown, drop off, escalation rate, and then any custom metrics depending on your workflow, your business rules, or the agent, or basically your use case and specific workflow. And this is very important. I think it's the most important layer, because it's not only answering if the voice agent is working. I think the biggest question is to move from, we're not only building a technical system that we need all the layers to be working correctly. We need to make sure it's actually achieving the goal. It's actually helpful for the business. It's actually achieving the business outcome that we expect, or the ROI from building this whole project. Second is agent quality. Is the agent responding correctly? This is the big question to answer here. And here you should focus on quality and behavior. Like, is hallucination, for example, is the agent making up things or giving incorrect information? How relevant is the answers to the topic or to the use case? Is it consistent, or it change its mind and change the answer every now and then during the call? And then the user sentiment, how satisfied or frustrated the customers. Third one is conversation flow. Does the interaction feel natural or human alike as much as possible? And here you should focus on the conversation quality itself, from talk ratio, how much is the agent is talking? Is it talking too much? Is it dominating the conversation, or too little? Interruptions, who is interrupting whom, and how often, or when it stops after the interruption, repetitions or loops, does it get stuck in any part of the conversation, and who is ending the conversation? And fourth element is coverage. Are we asking for the thing our users are asking for, the things that the agent doesn't support? For example, are we covering all the different use cases or not? And basically, it's a game of like knowns and unknowns. Sometimes we build the voice agent for a specific use case, but especially with voice, the scenarios or different paths are unlimited, and users can take the conversation in so many different paths that maybe we didn't plan for while building. So here you should look for unknown intents or fallback metrics, new requests, new patterns that come up from the conversations, trying to understand if the customers are sent to the wrong flow or intent, and any changes that happen in the user behavior. Last one is technical performance. I think this one is simple. It's basically, is the system is running smoothly? Is the conversation complete successfully? And you should look for latency, tool calling. This one, I think it's very important. Like, are the integration really working? It's very simple to have an agent, for example, booking an appointment. But if the API fails to really book, the agent might miss this and tell the customer that it's booked and everything is confirmed and all of that, but it's not really on the system. And transcription accuracy, is the speech understood correctly? Is the agent understand the conversation from the customer or what the customer is saying? The last one is silence or unexpected failures. Here, basically, we need to make sure that the system is reliable and stable and can handle conversations in the right way. And finally, we have a bonus one, which is anomaly detection. Basically, you should look for, is there any, is anything behaving differently than before, or is there any sudden changes that we haven't seen? For example, traffic spike, sudden usage, sudden increase or drop in the usage compared to the normal patterns. Metrics are drifting or shifting, slowing down or getting better or worse at any time. Cost spike, for example, or even time. I think this is also another one where, like, your average call is like 3 minutes, and then suddenly you have a call which is 15 minutes. Probably something is happening, or new unexpected patterns or failures. And I think that's it for me. I hand it over to Nihal. Please go ahead, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Mai. So I'll start sharing my screen, and basically what I will do is take you through a walkthrough of the tuner platform, and then we will walk also through practical best practices and practical tips on how to implement things based on the framework that Mai explained. So let's start. So I have here the tuner platform. I already created an agent. Before, I'll walk you through everything high level first so that you can understand where everything is and understand the basic concepts of how to set up an agent, how to analyze a call, and how to understand the analysis and the logs that you can see. So this is the overview dashboard of everything that is happening, a snapshot of everything that is happening. And then you have the call logs. You can see everything that you push to tuner. Muhammad will tell us more how you can do that, how you can push calls to tuner. You can filter by a lot of criteria. Then you have the analysis. I'll also walk you through the analysis more after we understand how we can set up an agent and how we can apply the frameworks and the concepts that May explained. But basically here is a dashboard of how the agent is performing across several things like the success rate, seeing the error rate, seeing like what is causing the most failures. For example, here, the biggest error is caused by hallucinating a property data. Most of the calls only have one red flag, which is good, not so many. And then here you can see like the number of failed calls by intent, so you see the impact. So for example, here, people who we couldn't identify their reason of calling, their intent, have the most failed calls. You can also see a breakdown of costs, which is really interesting and important, especially if you are changing things in your agent, to keep an eye about on the cost and how it's changing. And then here you have all the breakdown of the configuration that we will set up together. So let's start by understanding first how tuner analyze voice AI calls. Here you set up your agent and add all the details that we will need to be able to understand what is the goal of this agent. If you have any specific guardrails or capabilities that you want to add. So it's basically understanding how is this agent supposed to work. Then tuner passes through different layers of analysis. The first thing we do is we try to understand the call by classifying how it ended and what actually was the main intent of the user. And the best practices we have here is to set up this based on, of course, based on your workflow. So every agent will be different. So for example, here, this is a real estate agent. You can see that I set up the outcomes as I have this agent can book viewing and can reschedule viewing and cancel viewing. It has some capabilities. It can transfer to a human. So I set up all the outcomes based on my workflow. And then for each outcome, I can define whether this outcome is a success, is considered a success or a failure, which we will then use in our dashboards and our analytics and our metrics, as I showed you. So for example, in one case, I can build this agent to handle everything, and the transferring to a human can be considered as a failure in this specific case. But for another agent, I might actually build it in a way that the agent is supporting specific flows, and there is an expected flow where the agent has to transfer to a human. So in this case, for example, transferring to a human will not be considered as a failure. Another thing actually to take care of, depending on the type of the agent that you're building. For example, if you are building an inbound agent, you might get a lot of like spam, especially as May mentioned, like when people discover, especially like for the bigger brands, when people discover their voice agent, some people have this idea of like, we want to troll and video and record it and then put it on TikTok and things like that. So having an inbound agent, you would expect that some people would actually have the intention of spamming it or trolling it. And keeping this in mind and building your outcomes in that way will help you set up alerts and set up monitoring where you can see if there's, for example, an anomaly in the amount of spam call that you get over a specific period. Then there must be something wrong that have been done, or maybe there's something that you need to handle differently to keep down the costs or things like that. So basically, everything you think about adding here has to start from understanding first, like, what is the use case that you are building for, and what questions do you want to answer, and what things do you want to monitor for this agent, and then you will be able to convert all those questions into metrics and KPIs, and then configure them in a tuner, and then have an observability and a monitoring system. So again, like the wrong number, if even inbound and outbound, I think it's a best practice actually to have the wrong number as an inbound and outbound, because some people actually, you might be listed your number is listed incorrectly somewhere or something, or like someone is using your number somewhere and people are calling you thinking you are a specific agent while you're not. So this is for the inbound. The outbound for the lead qualification, for example, if there's an increase in the wrong number, maybe the system that you are building to gather and scrap all the leads that you are feeding your voice AI, maybe there is a problem here. So again, like you set up everything in a way so that you can quickly figure out problems before they scale and then be able to fix them before people start complaining. For the intent, it's the same thing. And actually, I will leave this in a bit. I will show you like a high-level walkthrough, and then when we go to the best practices, I will tell you a little bit more tips on this also. But here you set up the user intents, like how are you expecting people to what is the main like the job to be done for this agent? Why are people calling the agent? So for example, here, book a viewing, reschedule a viewing, cancel a viewing. And then you have the data extraction, the fields that you want to extract. You can add a text, or you can extract a text, a number, a Boolean, or an enum. You would use these also not only for data collection, but also for validation. And then here we have the evals part, which is the behavior checks. So you create the quality matrix that you want to evaluate the agent based on. And the quality matrix can be either a binary evaluation or a scored evaluation. A binary evaluation, it's only a pass or a fail, or a score-based evaluation. So maybe for the more fluffy things like the politeness or like the tone of voice or things like that, you can score it from 1 to 5. You have here some suggested checks, and we are building pre-built templates and a lot of checks for specific industries and for specific use cases that we will share on our blog very soon. So here you have the suggested checks that you can use. You can add any of them. You can edit the definition. You can use some of the inputs that you defined earlier, the allowed capabilities. You can check. Later also we're adding like fact checking against documents and things like that. So you can set up any eval that you would like from here. And then we have the voice matrix, which we run automatically. We calculate things related to the latency, related to the talk ratio, and to the longest monologue. And then we have the labels and red flags, which is very useful for you to, since when May explained, like the problem is with getting a voice agent into production is with the scale. So the more data points and the more labels and the more information you have for each call will help you find a needle in a haystack. So you can set up either, so labels and red flags, they are tags basically. You can tag the call based on specific conditions. You can select any of the conditions that you created, like the behavior checks, the voice metrics, the data fields, anything that you extracted already. And based on the operator or like the evaluation methods you select, you can tag this call if it matches this condition. You can tag it as a label. And this label is mostly will be used to like categorize and filter. Maybe later you would want to extract some of those calls to use as a data set, for example, and things like that. So think of labels, it's only for tagging. It doesn't contain any meaning of an error, for example. But the red flag is what we consider as an error. So if there is a specific criteria here that you would consider as an error, you would set it up as a red flag. And you can set as many as labels and red flags as you want, and then you would actually see like the percentage of like how many errors or how many red flags are you getting in each call, as I've shown you in the performance analysis here before. Then the last thing, and then we can go to the best practices. The last thing is the alerts. You cannot do all that and then not get an alert when something goes unexpectedly different from what you've built it to do. So you can create alerts, specify their severity. You can add multiple conditions. You can select any of the things that we extracted before, and also some of the call metadata, and also some of the aggregates of the data that we extracted. And then you specify the alert based on a pattern. So for example, I will show some examples also with the best practices. So let's, for example, open something here. So this is the spam spike. For example, I'm expecting, like, if more than 5 calls were marked as a spam in a span of an hour, this is a critical error that we need to be alerted on an email or a Slack, so that we can investigate and see, because this, like, spam calls will consume our credit, so we'll need to be alerted for that. So again, like, this is a high level walkthrough for the whole system. What I want to do next is actually walk you through some of the issues, or like the problems that we've seen some of our customers face, and how we help them to set up their observability and their monitoring to solve those problems. For example, one of the biggest problems, or like the forgotten things, is actually when you build an inbound agent, you always design it for a specific use cases in mind, and you also, like, you design it that it should do that but doesn't do that, and you imagine that you are covering everything and you're covering all the cases. But usually testing is different from production, and different from production traffic. So what we suggest everyone who's building an inbound agent is always specify a fallback intent, where you can collect all the calls that didn't meet any of the known like user journeys, or the jobs to be done that you designed your voice AI to do, and also extract more information about what was actually the main reason the caller called this voice agent, so that you can be able to, whenever this other category, or this category exceed a specific percentage, for example, your team can go and investigate, and maybe these are the things that will need to prioritize as a features to support in your voice agent. For example, here for this real estate agent, I have the other category. So I created an other or unhandled request. You can define the prompt. So here I defined it that doesn't match any of the things that we already know the agent should handle. And then we also defined here a call reason, where we extract, and we are doing some, like, hacks to normalize it, and to be able to show it on a graph, so that we can see, like, what is the clusters, or like why people are calling this agent, mostly outside of the main use cases that we set up this agent to do. Again, like, most of those best practices and those, like, templates, we will share on our blog, so that you can benefit from them. Once you set things in that way, for example, you can see here, these are some calls that are tagged as other, and then the call reason here was ask mortgage option. This was a real estate agent who was supposed to mainly book viewings, but people were calling for like different use cases, as I said. So this is the first best practice. So the second one, again, related to, like, getting your voice agent in production and then facing things unexpectedly, like spam and wrong numbers. These apply for inbound and outbound both. Again, like here, you can go and set up, as I showed you before, like have the call outcome have a spam type and have a wrong number type. And then you can have an alert for the spam, for example. This can be more important, so you can set it up as a critical alert. You can also set, there's another example here for the wrong number. And you can, like all the things that I mentioned here, you can track in the dashboards. You can create like you can see at the dash at the KPIs and see like how things are changing over time, like how is the analysis of the breakdown of the outcomes and the intents over time, if there's a spikes, if there's a change, and things like that. Another best practice is not only rely on like the success rate or like the overall success of the call. Sometimes calls are masked as successful, but they actually didn't finish until the end. For example, if we can see here, one of the calls, booking, viewing, I set up here a behavior check for the tool compliance. And I can show you first how I set this up. I can go to the evals. And then here I set up a quality metric or a behavior check to check whether actually whenever the agent is stating something that is being done that depends on an API, for example, that they have done an action, they've booked an appointment, they've rescheduled the appointment, they've canceled the appointment, anything that actually needs evidence, needs to be supported by evidence. I created a check to make sure that whenever this happens, there has to be a log or an evidence in the transcript or in the logs that are associated with this call, showing that the agent actually called the API and the API returned a success. So for example, in this call, here it failed. So for something like this, I would actually set up an alert and call this, for example, like a misleading success or something like that. And if there is a rise, for example, in the number of calls that the agent is promising that they have done something and the logs actually show otherwise, I can eventually like track this immediately instead of like waiting for the users to complain about things not being up to date. You can also not only like the tool compliance, you can also pair it with, for example, if a definition of a successful booking is I need to be able to collect specific data fields. So I can extract those data fields and I can do a quality check and an alert based on those. For example, if a booking is saved or added to the system without having the actual the required data field collected. Another like best practice also is to treat every change you do as a deployment or a code change. So whenever you are changing anything in your voice agent, change the version, the agent version, and then you can observe here, for example, I had a problem in this agent, for example, in the hallucination for the hallucinating the property information. So for the first version, it failed a lot. And then for the later, like for the next versions, I kept optimizing until I reached 0% red flag. So there was no errors happening at all here related to the hallucination part. So yeah, so by this I covered all the best practices that I wanted to share with you. And we can now move into the technical integration and the live demo part. I will stop sharing and leave it for Muhammad to continue.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Nihal. So before moving into the technical part, let's do a very quick exercise, and I want every attendee to type his role, whether he's a technical or business, in the chat window, so we understand the context of the majority of the attendees.
I was going to ask Muhammad if people can share their voice stack, what platform they
Exactly.
built on top of that. That
Yeah,
also will be
this
very
would be
helpful.
awesome. This would be awesome.
Live kit, nice. Gemini native audio. Perfect. Keep them coming. That will help us with prioritizing integrations, basically.
Yeah, I can see a lot of love kit.
Yes. Will do. It's top of the list already.
I see. Okay, I wished if we have prepared the demo oriented for the live kit, but unfortunately we prepared for another provider. But whatever we are going to present here, it's the same concepts that can be applied for any provider. So quickly, as we mentioned, like Tuner is the observability platform. It has this lovely feature that Nihal walked us through, but still the main big question is how I would be able to push my calls, my agent calls, into Tuner so that I can leverage all these existing features. And this is exactly what we are going to walk through now. So at the very beginning, we have a good documentation explaining some of the concepts of tuner so that people, whether they are pure technical or business but have a slight technical background, would be able to understand tuner, understand the main components and how to deal with it. In the docs, we have a public API so that any customer using whatever platform would like to push his calls should be able to use this API to smoothly interact or exchange data between his agent platform and the tuner. The API itself, it has all the fields described with the data types and description of what you should use for every field. And in our documentation, this is an interactive one, which you can try it by trying it, adding some sample data in every required field as a minimal. You can execute it and actually push some data into your account and start to see the data flowing between this API and the actual UI. Just to mention, we have two mechanisms of authentication. Usually for the API, we use the API key authentication model. And in order for you to find your API key, once you create an account on Tuner and you go to your workspace, you should be able to define an API key in this section, save it, and after saving it, you would be able to use it directly. I will jump the details because everything here about the API is already documented with what we expect of every certain field and how this field is being used in the platform itself. And I want to show you a quick example for synchronizing data from an agent which I have built on 11 Labs. So I have this dummy agent on 11 Labs, and I want to be able to leverage the tuner capabilities on top of this agent. So what we have built like I would say a Python bootstrap code, which will help you to simplify a bit exchanging or syncing data between a custom provider and tuner. It's wrapping the API itself into some data in order to simplify using the API on batch or a high volume of calls. So quickly to go through the document, the project, we have a README which explains exactly what you need in a clear steps to configure the project. After going through these steps in order to configure your project, your next stop should be the .env file. The .env file defines the variables or the configurations that it needed in order to make a successful data synchronization between the two systems. In this example, definitely you will need an API, your 11 Lab API key, you will need to put it. You will also need to set the agent ID which you want to sync the data for. And this is usually, you can find it here in your agent. Once you are opening your agent, this is the ID. On the other side, you will need to put also the tuner API key and the workspace you will be using and your agent ID in tuner. So going back here in tuner, for every user, once you sign up into tuner, you will get a workspace created for you with an ID. The ID will be showing here. So this is what you will use. And for the agent remote identifier, in order to start to sync this data, you need to create a corresponding agent in tuner. And one of the things I recommend, it's optional, but I recommend is to set the agent ID with the same ID of your source system. This will help you to connect things together. If you want to use a different naming or a different ID in tuner, it's up to you. So in this example, like I will take this ID, I will put it here. And in my providers, I will select that this agent will use the custom API provider. I will fill the rest and save it. I have already done this, so I should have here my 11 Labs demo agent. And as you can see, at the moment, this agent has no any calls. Going back to our project, once you finish it, your last thing to configure is the time window of the synchronization you want to include. So based on your volume, you might be interested in like syncing the last couple of days or a couple of weeks. You have the two options, either to set a time of window, which the synchronization tool will be looking for the calls in your source system and pick it for the synchronization, or another option is you can specify a specific start time and end time, which all the calls that lie between these two dates will be selected for synchronization. Other than that, for non-technical people, if you checked out the project, configured these keys and run it, it will do the synchronization for you. For people who would like to be curious and learn more about the project structure, so we have three main pillars. So main pillar is the schemas. So here we have some models, Python models, which represent the data expected by tuner and the data exported by 11 Labs. So for example, in 11 Labs, this is the model used to represent a conversation happened by an agent. In tuner, this is the model represented by a conversation happened by an agent. The second layer is the two clients. So we have the 11 lab client, and it's a wrapper, a Python wrapper on top of 11 lab SDK to simplify the logic about extracting a conversation, enriching it with the transcription, the recording, etc. And we have the tuner client. This is the wrapper which wrap this API. The third and the final thing is the mappers. So as you know, every source might be using a certain fields, a certain metrics that might not directly match with tuner design. So the mappers here is a Python simple mapper classes which take the data from the source, map it and transform it to be able to be sent to the destination system. And this mapper take most of the data from the 11 labs, prepare it, and the tuner mapper just check the metrics, make sure that the metrics are standardized. So for example, in 11 labs, most of the fields related to the time are calculated in milliseconds. In tuner, we use seconds, so we do the conversion inside this mapper. When it comes to the cost, 11 lab calculates the cost in cents. We calculate it in dollars, so we do the conversation. So we have wrapped all this logic into the mappers in order to be able to reuse it directly. At the very end, we have this simple Python class, which just reads the configuration file, start to retrieve the conversations that fall within the time interval you have configured, perform the mapping, and then push it to tuner. And now let's do a quick think. For simplicity, in my time window, we will be thinking only one call, but thinking a call like thinking 1,000. So for example, let's run this code and see what will happen. Okay, so here we managed to connect to 11 labs, and we have picked one call which fall into the time. I think our timing, we were looking for the last 96 hours, and I just had a one call within this time window, and then we push it to tuner. So going to tuner now, this is the actual call in 11 labs. And if we went to tuner, we refresh it. Okay, we can see the same call here now. It has been synchronized. And if we will compare it, all the data here, the UI might be different, but all the data here is now living in tuner. And this call now is ready to be applied and to be observed by all the tools and the capabilities Nihal just showed us. This was a very quick demo for the concept of thinking data. And as I've mentioned, the same concept applied to any platform. All you need to do will be different in the client, which will export the data from your platform, and the mappers, because the mappers depend on mapping specific fields from the source to the destination.
Perfect. Almost on time. Exactly on time, actually. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you.